learning. And I also just want to again express my gratitude for both Rita and DeAndre for their willingness to join us here today. Hopefully, you've all had a chance to see some of the emails about other events taking place with Circle. So just to give you a few updates, our event yesterday was rescheduled now to, is it next Monday, Hector?
Yeah.
To next Monday. So keep an eye out for those posters and the information's on our website. Also tomorrow, Thursday, is it at 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
7 p.m. we have an
Friday at 10 p.m.
Is the book launch on Friday, huh?
Friday.
Oh, so Friday is the book launch for the second edition of 500 Years of Resistance, the graphic novel. And that's at the First People's Bus.
Yes.
So if you get a chance, please do come check that out. And then also on Friday, we'll have the Indigenous Research Workshop. So that will be at 2 o'clock. If you're able to come join us for that, that would be great. So today I just want to begin by giving a little bit of background around the great folks we have joining us, Professor Rita DeMoon and Professor DeAndre Smiles. So Rita received her BA in politics with social administration. Oh, I'm going to. Because actually, I'm going to skip half of it because I can't even pronounce half this stuff. From the UK, anyway. Her MA as well from the University of Essex. Oh my God. This is her British background, which I love to tease her for. I should do all of this with a British accent.
Some other country.
But her PhD is from UBC. And before joining UVic, she was also at the University of Fraser Valley. She was also a short postdoc here at UVic and also a postdoc at the U of A. So she's had a number of really rich academic experiences that she can draw from as she gives you feedback and advice today on things to consider throughout your graduate school journey. Her research interests have centered on issues of identity and difference politics and power, including multiculturalism, culture and nation building, gender politics and feminism, intersectionality, critical race studies, indigenous nationhood, and post-colonial and ethnic colonial politics. She's incredibly well published, so I do encourage you to check out many of her publications, and teaches many great courses, including a graduate seminar on the politics of colonialism, and an undergraduate seminar on race politics. So do check those out. And then we're also very excited to have Professor DeAndre Smiles with us, largely because you can really never have too many Anishinaabe, especially out here in the West Coast. So it's the Nish takeover. And his pronouns are he, him, and his, and also they or we in Ojibwe. I love that. That's part of his bio. And he's Ojibwe, Black, and settler, and a citizen of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota. He's an Indigenous geographer whose research interests are multifaceted and include Indigenous geographies, epistemologies, science and technology studies, tribal cultural resource preservation and protection, and also a lot of great work on futurities. So he's an assistant professor in the Department of Geography here at UVic. He earned his bachelor's degree from St. Cloud State, which is awesome, and his master's degree in global Indigenous studies from the University of Minnesota Duluth, which is where I had my first tenure track position. So I love the circle of the small world. And his PhD in geography comes from Ohio State University, where he was also the president's postdoc scholar in the Department of History. He currently serves as the chair of the Indigenous Peoples Specialty Group of the American Association of Geographers, and is a member of NASA and the Canadian Association of Geographers, and has worked on a number of grants and research labs has served as a member of editorial board for journals, as well as the board of trustees for tribal colleges, and has clearly some great website design skills as well, based on his own website. So again, I think both of them will have lots of great feedback for all of you, and I know you're all here to hear from them. So I will turn it over to them.
Okay. Yeah, well, hello everybody. Welcome to the session. Really pleased that Heidi invited me to be part of the conversation here today. So, DeAndre and I thought it might be helpful to start with everybody introducing themselves and actually identifying why they're here today. What is it that you would find useful in terms of knowing, so that we can kind of respond to the questions or issues that you might have for us as well. And then we also have some other points that we can address. So does that sound reasonable? I know a lot of people have their cameras off. I am going to encourage you to have your cameras on if you're willing, as much as possible. This is part of creating a community within the SAGE program, which I think is really good for us to do. But I understand if people choose not to. So maybe we'll just kind of go around. I'll just go around and invite people to introduce themselves and to identify any kinds of questions or issues that you want to address today. Maybe I'll start from Vanessa.
Hi.
Hello, baby. Hello, Morgan. Can I just say congratulations first? It's so exciting. So yeah, Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Udy. I am a settler from unceded territory in Montreal, Quebec. And I've been here in Victoria for about 5 years now.
Vanessa actually is just figuring out the volume there.
Sure.
Okay, try again, Vanessa.
Can you hear me now? Is that better? No? I'll try without my headset.
She's not muted. Oh, she's not.
And someone else drive, it's supposed to be
Yeah,
connected to
okay.
that.
That better?
Okay, go ahead. You just
There's some feedback on your end. So yeah, hi, my name is Vanessa. I am a settler from unceded territory in Montreal, Quebec. I've been living here on unceded territories in Victoria for about 5 years now. I'm currently doing my PhD. I'm in my first year in the Law and Society program. Yeah, and I guess my research interests involve Indigenous law, questions of ontology, epistemology. Yeah, in terms of navigating the grad school experience, I think relationships are just a big one for me. Yeah, building relationships, managing expectations, and how to deal with conflict. Yeah. Thank you.
Vanessa, can you hear us? Oh,
Yep.
that's what
Can you don't?
I'm still muted, so it's because my speaker's on, right? Because we couldn't hear her. So maybe mute you.
All right. Stacey, can you hear us? Yeah, do you want to go next? We're just going on the list.
Something's still wrong. I think you have to mute that computer.
Try. All right. Do you want to try now, Stacey?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Okay, go ahead, Stacey. Try.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, just turn your volume up.
Okay, yeah.
Cool, perfect, thanks. Hi, everyone. Stacy Swain, she, her, or they, them is fine. I am also a settler of Ukrainian British descent, grew up in Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, been here since 2017. I'm a PhD candidate in political science, and I completed the Indigenous Nationhood program. My research is on, I guess, the politics of Indigenous ceremony in public space, and how we think about public space, what Indigenous legal orders might have to also offer on that. And I guess in terms of grad school, I'm definitely struggling with transitioning from passing my candidacy exam, my proposal defense, to actually writing the dissertation and doing research. I'm currently teaching my first full course, Gender and Politics in poli-sci, and that has been a convenient distraction, as well as just like, obviously it's been really interesting and great for me, but yeah, so I'll be focusing again on my own work in January, which is both exciting and terrifying. So that's a big one. And then the other one is, I suppose, just thinking about how to manage writing the dis as well as potentially teaching, because I'm in my 5th year. So I will need to be ensuring I have some form of income as well. So I think those are my big ones.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Cheyenne. My pronouns are she, her. I'm mostly here because Heidi told me to come, and so when Heidi tells me to do stuff, I usually do it, but I don't really have any like specific things right now. I'm just kind of like, my comp is next week, so my brain is a little bit like, I don't know, I can't really think of things, but I'm definitely really excited to hear from both DeAndre and Rita, and yeah, so be good.
Did you say me? I am having a hard time hearing anyone.
Oh, if they can't hear, then it is because we don't have you. So maybe unmute you and we'll see if there's.
Okay, Morgan.
That's coming.
Hi. Sorry, we're in bed because I thought they were gonna nap, maybe. What we're doing.
That's okay.
I'm Morgan, I'm Gitsan, and my pronouns are she, her, or they, them. And this is Samai, and I'm in the dissertation writing phase of my PhD and teaching, and I still don't, I don't really, I would like to like go onto the job market soon. So I guess, yeah, I feel like I should know what I'm doing by now, but I don't really. So any advice is welcome. So writing, and then also the transition to the job market or like postdoc would be great.
Thank you, Morgan. Juliana.
Hi, everyone. So I'm a second year MA student, Department of Political Science. On my father's side, I'm descendant from Danish and English immigrants who settled on Kitsalis and Gitsim territories. My mother was adopted at birth by a Scottish family, and I don't know a lot about her family, but I do know they were Métis Cree Ojibwe. And I guess I'm really thankful that you're organizing and facilitating these conversations. And I'm here because I'm wondering if I'm going to apply for a PhD program or not, looking to the future and looking for advice in making that decision.
Thank you. Ooh. I think I'm here.
Is
Oh.
your microphone on?
Now, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
One day we'll get this figured out.
So sorry, that was
Not
totally my fault.
That's good.
We should be good for
Yeah,
the rest of the
that's
time, yeah.
So hi, yes, my name is Camille. I go by the pronouns of she, her. I'm from French settler descendants, and I'm also from Montreal, Mohawk unceded territory, like Vanessa. I'm actually right now enrolled in the graduate certificate in Indigenous nationhood. I'm doing the standalone program, but I'm looking at my options to perhaps pursue a master's afterwards. I'm here to have general information. Also, I'm not sure what I will be doing after the certificate, so I just want to have like information on how the programs work, a bit about maybe writing skills or organizational management when you're doing a master's and how it works, because I know that a lot of work is done by yourself. So just to have more of a heads up on how the programs work. And I'm really interested into Indigenous laws, more of the research part, but I'm not exactly sure which area really is of interest for now. So I'd like to see what the opportunities are, and also a bit to see what the options after doing a master's are on the job markets, and just to see where this could lead me. So thank you for organizing this.
Okay, I think that's everybody. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, I've got my head in the computer.
It was a hybrid.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Gwe Nina Yigi Miwa Drakawasi Sarah Rude, Gwe Gispege Wage, Gwe Anishinaabe Kwe. So my name is Sarah Rude, and I'm Mi'kmaq from Gaspésie through my late grandfather, my mother's side, and Algonquin and French on my mother's side as well. And on my father's side, I have settler ancestry from England, Ireland, and France. I'm doing an interdisciplinary master's in political science or Indigenous governance with Heidi, as well as political ecology with Sarah Hunt. And also hopefully going to Dishenta for some land-based education. And I've just started my master's, so I'm just here for whatever I feel the learning curve for myself personally. So I'll just put that out there. Yeah.
Okay, if I missed anybody, I don't think. DeAndre, do you want to start first? Or I can see in terms of some of their questions.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of really good questions out there. I think the one that kind of really resonated with me is kind of dealing with that post-comps kind of hangover a little bit. That's something that I dealt with. Well, my advisor made me take a month off after my comps. I took him right before our winter break, and so she was quite adamant that she was like, you're not doing anything for a solid month after that. But the problem after taking a month off is that I had more fieldwork and an actual dissertation to get to, and trying to get myself kind of like going again took me a long time. So I really like something that we wrote kind of a handout so that we can kind of organize our thoughts and organize how we do things here. And I really like. I don't know if we did. I think that was just something where I think she made it for herself. And I said, hey, I actually really like this because this is more organized than I am.
And we can share that with everybody after.
Sure. Yeah. But there was something about making sure that you're setting aside time to write every single day, even when you're taking time off. Taking time off in academia is a relative type of thing where I don't know if we ever really take time off, or if we do, it's usually, it's something that I know myself I feel like intensely guilty about. I was just at home in the States with my wife, and I took like 4 or 5 days just completely off email and things like that. And it was like almost anxiety inducing, like 5 days at work before I thought I was missing doing things. But one of the ways that I help combat that is I say, even on times when I'm taking some time off and taking kind of taking some time to relax. I'm still kind of being mindful of kind of future goals and what I'm going to be going next, and taking at least a little bit of time each day to do some work on that. So if you got done with comps and you're, for you, Stacey, if you're going to teach a class, right? Thinking about, you can still take some time to think about curricular development, right? Think about readings you're going to do, think about activities, take a few minutes to do that. Or think about, 30 minutes about, okay, what kind of things do I need to do to get your field work if you're doing that? Or, what can I do a little bit of reading today, but the theoretical parts of my dissertation? Things of that nature. I think you get the best of both worlds, where you're still taking time for yourself, and you're taking that time to honestly kind of breathe after comp, which is, I know for me, was a very, very intense period of time, and time where I definitely needed to take that time to myself. But also, it still allows you to be strategic about, about the work that you're doing, so that when you do come back to it and you get going again, you don't have to do what I did, but just kind of have to start at a dead stop and start building the momentum again, that you're just kind of still staying active, but just at a bit of a lower kind of pace, and just kind of something that's scaled down to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is really important to take some time off. I think it's almost like you need a transition. But like DeAndre, I don't think you can take that. So I would take 2 weeks off of a much relaxed pace, and then start building up again. And that could be 15 minutes a day of writing. It could be figuring out what your outline is going to look like for your thesis work. But I think one of the most helpful tasks to do at that stage is what Hokulani did a workshop a couple of weeks ago, is actually what she suggested, which is actually develop a schedule. And what that schedule looks like during that time, during those couple of weeks, is you identify your goals, you identify your tasks to meet those goals, and then you identify time frames for that. And I think we still have the link that for her handout, and it was really helpful. And it's really about breaking down those tasks that I think is going to help people make that transition. So, Morgan, you talked about this, as well as Stacey, but also you, Cheyenne, right? Like your comps are almost done. What comes next? So you have to really start breaking that down. And that really means being really concrete. So if you're going to read if you need to kind of identify and have a clear definition, say, of resurgence, then you need to have the readings that you need to look at for that week and assign dedicated time for that. I think that's really important to do. The writing practice that DeAndre mentioned, at least 15 minutes a day. For me, I need half an hour because it takes me that long just to kind of get going. A dedicated writing practice. So figure out where you like to work. Do you like to work in a coffee shop, in your bed, over coffee, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, whatever it is. But regardless of whether you feel like it or not, you sit at your computer and you write. And it might be, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here at university. I have nothing to say, but that's what you write. You start with that. And by the end of that, I think you get a little bit clearer in terms of what you're trying to do. And then the other thing I would suggest is develop a note-taking practice. And I was taught this, and it's really helped me, and Heidi kind of jokes with me all the time about this. She says, because I still do this note-taking practice where I take notes on what I read, and I try not to make it 25 pages book anymore, but 3 or 4 pages. And but think about how you're organizing your notes. So for me, it was around chapter themes for my thesis that I kind of thought I knew what I was going to do for those chapters, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I would organize them according to that. So one side would be what the author wrote, and then the other side, how I might use it, whether it's in a critical way or whether in a way that I wanted to get my thinking about it.
And for those who attended the Zotero workshop, that workshop is also, I believe, available through the library for people who missed it. But we recorded it too, didn't we?
It's on our YouTube channel.
It is on our YouTube channel. So it's on our YouTube channel. I encourage you to check it out if you missed it, because within Zotero, you can also like keep all the note taking and it builds all your citations in it. So there's a whole system in there as well, including, this is the part that blew me away. On PDFs, you can merely like highlight the sentence and it will drag it right into your notes. Like you don't have to type it.
I didn't know that.
I know, this was the mind-blowing
That's
thing for
cool.
everybody at that workshop, was like,
Very cool.
literally that there was this highlighting feature that would like take all the quotes into your docs for you. So check that out on our YouTube channel. You know, I think it goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, right? So a bit of software to help the process along for these techie grad students of ours. I did this on note cards, so that's just like the generation.
The other thing that comes to mind is set up a meeting with your supervisor and commit to producing something with your supervisor. And it might be a really short kind of a one-pager even, right? But so that you're accountable to somebody who's going to be able to give you feedback. Your store little. Want to pick up anything else?
You want to address the job market, I think, but I want to do that maybe a little bit later.
Yeah.
Nice kind of ladder up workshop.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because I have some thoughts on that too. And anyone that's going on the job market, a few years ago, I created, like really sad like that, a template for like questions to ask when you go for a job interview and questions that you might get. And I give that to anybody and everybody. Heidi's laughing at me. Yeah.
It's great. That's why we invited you to do this workshop. I wasn't gonna tell you guys how to organize your life, but I knew Rita could give you lots of great tips. It's super organized on here, you guys. It's amazing. So,
Yeah.
take all of her advice.
The other thing that I think, like just sort of talking to other people that I think is really important is identify why you're in grad school. What is it that you're trying to do? Who are the communities you're trying to serve in your work? Which communities allow you to really have your own kind of like how you care about the world, right? When you're doing Indigenous politics related work, you've got to be someone who cares about the world already. So what is it that you care about? And sometimes this might sound really harsh. And sometimes I think I need to say it. Sometimes we need to kind of get over ourselves in the sense of we have responsibilities. And I had to learn this as a woman of color that faced a lot of racism and sexism, that I wanted to try and get through grad school because I had obligations to like, other women of color. And so I needed to not get, just kind of remember why I was here, that those are also, that's also like the community I was trying to serve. So yeah, I think that's really important, like who you care about, why you're here, what are you trying to achieve. And it was Sherry Pasternak last year that talked about, she would have a weekly practice every week, every Friday morning. She would sit, right, and talk about, and write, like for 2 hours dedicated, why she was working on what she was working on. How was it going to actually serve the community she was working, studying or working with? And so that we remember that this is important work. It's a reminder to us that it's important work.
And she like repurposed a lot of that into like more community accessible, deliverable formats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember her saying that too.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think finding that community is super helpful. I think that was where I struggled my first year of my PhD, was going from a space where I was surrounded by fellow Indigenous students to going to a program where I was the only Indigenous student in my program, and being in a space that was actively and I think lethally violent towards Indigenous thought and viewpoints in seminars and things like that. It was really tough. I think it came to the point, and I'm far more open about it now. I had a professor basically tell me, "Oh, we don't do Indigenous geographies here, so you should drop out and go elsewhere." And that was the point where I almost left the program, and then I happened to stumble upon this tiny Indigenous graduate student organization that we had at Ohio State. And I mean, we are very blessed here at UVic to have a very strong Indigenous student population. I think I was one of 10 grad students at Ohio State's campus. We had 60,000 students there when I went there, and I think only 40 undergrads. And so we were really super tight-knit community, very, very tiny, but they kept me, I credit them with keeping me in graduate school and actually helping me to finish my PhD. As a matter of fact, I thank them in the acknowledgments of my dissertation because of the role that they played, because it wasn't only just the academic part of keeping me accountable and having people that I can actually go and sit and chat with. It's harder to hear when I'm talking. I can probably speak up a little bit too. I'm kind of soft-spoken. But just finding that community of people that could keep me accountable and could also serve as like that emotional support. Because I think that's for academics of color and for students who are your academics, right? Like that is the hidden labor, right? That exists even beyond the coursework. It's just trying sometimes the fights to be heard in seminars or to have people take your thoughts and your viewpoints seriously. So having people that can kind of serve as that support for you is really, really super helpful. It's something where, if it can, I think about it, it's like, it's how can you be expected to, write a thesis, write a dissertation if you don't have that emotional support that goes underneath it. It's a very deeply emotional labor. So I'll stop there, but I just really wanted to kind of add off what you said.
Yeah, and I think that is, I've learned over the years, I kind of need to build in 25% of my day to deal with the racist bullshit. And that's true, right? So I can't expect to do an 8-hour writing day. That's not going to happen, especially the older I get and the less tolerance my body has of this. So building time for that, I think is really good. And then think about like the work that you're doing. I just want to come back to what Shuri Pasternak had said around like the non-academic communities you might produce work for. So I know sometimes students, especially if they're doing activist kind of related work and academic work, the emotional kind of labor is really intense because you're getting hit from multiple sides, as DeAndre kind of noted for us. But think about how you can use your academic or scholarly work in non-academic ways as well. And I want to say to you, one of the things that I really appreciated about what Shuri Pasternak said was that we don't have to compete. And that universities actually want us to do more and more kind of social production of knowledge, engage with community formats. So think about if you can do, for example, like a public talk or some sort of posting, whether you create a pamphlet for a community on your research, or a video, podcast, right? Like, so there's other ways that you can kind of feel passionate about what you're trying to do and not feel so depleted. It's good to find your aunties and uncles on campus, but even better, people that have nothing to do with the academy, to really be present to you when the shitty moments happen, and they will. Time and time again, to be able to debrief. I find for those that are teaching, it's really important to debrief after teaching. Heidi and I used to do this all the time with one another, and we had to, it took quite a bit of time, but it really helped us to kind of manage some of the racism that poli-sci was like as a, an environment. that we both had to navigate, both with our colleagues and also with students. So it's important to debrief after teaching. Dedicate, for those of you that are like trying to do your dissertation work and teach, dedicate days. I would say like 2 days teaching, 2 days research. I'm an over preparer for teaching, but it helps me to kind of contain it if I know that this is my teaching day. And so I'm not gonna like do research that day, or and then one day where you can kind of like catch up your laundry, or you know, those 50 emails that you never answer, whatever. I think that's really important as well. Yeah.
Well, like for you then, when you were teaching, you were doing your course prep and your teaching on the same day.
So yeah, I would do my teaching, and then the same day I would do my course prep for the following week. And I know that's a lot to do, and it's become harder for me with my health issues, but I was in the zone. Like my head was in the game. And so I found that much more manageable in terms of my time. And then I wasn't like, I need to prepare way ahead of time. Not everybody teaches like that, and you don't have to teach like that at all. Lots of people don't teach like that and do great classes. I think.
Different style. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's like partly about like, because for a lot of these guys, they are teaching, right? So about carving out time for like when they're doing research versus when they're teaching, right? Like I remember who had also said once that she never assigns, she modifies her assignments if she's finding that it's taking more time for her to grade them than the amount of time she's allocated for teaching. So for those who are teaching, like I know some of you who are here attending are also teaching, like part of managing those different demands, as you're saying, right, is about modifying the assignments, modifying your course prep, all these things so that it fits within the amount of space you can give it. Because otherwise teaching and service will take up all your time.
And the other sort of tip is if you're teaching, add stuff that you want to read for your dissertation. You'll get so excited, like talking to students or putting it together as a lecture just changes how you feel about it. And students will say something and it will be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Okay, that's like led to 5 other thoughts for me. So every year I do add new readings, including courses that I teach every year, so that I'm like reading work that's current and up to date and provoking me in my own thinking. So I think that's really important.
And not too, I remember John Barrows once said to me that because he had the daily writing practice you were encouraging, that because he was writing first thing in the morning, it would also really shape all his teaching so that then everything was flowing together as well.
Yeah.
Yes, please, okay.
I was just reading that.
I can take that one. If you want. So that's a great question, Sabrina. So I came from the United States, and so it's a different system in Canada. That's actually been the number one. I've been in Canada for a grand total, I think 2 months now, and I think that is the biggest thing. Is it's like people in the States say, "Oh no, Canada's just like the United States," and I'm like, "Well, you probably like visited somewhere in like Ontario, maybe that's like somewhat similar, but like also Canada's it's a very distinct country from the U.S. In many ways. A lot of them better than the U.S. But as far as the educational system, one of the things, as far as me, I guess I will preface this by saying that my kind of trajectory was atypical in that I am in geographies, indigenous peoples are very, very rare. Like we are basically unicorns in like any department that we go to. In geography departments in the US and Canada, actually they are. It's almost kind of like, it's almost objectification in the way that, oh my gosh, we get more Indigenous geographer here, but I happened to come out at a time of my PhD where there were a ton of positions coming open. So I did 1 year of postdoc. I also had the benefit of kind of being in a top 3 department in the US and having done a lot of like service leadership at like the PhD level, which is like unusual. But I would say that in a way that makes sense for you and your time commitments, because obviously the most important thing for you to do in your master's or your PhD is to get your thesis done and get your dissertation done. That is the #1 reason why you are in that program and the project you need to get out. But if you have the time to do so, think about getting involved at a national level with national or international organizations. Start networking. Go to conferences if you can, if there's funding available. Get to know people, because that really helped me actually, where I got to know folks through going to geography conferences and through having a fairly active Twitter presence. And therefore, when the job came open at UPIC, I knew somebody up here was like, yeah, we're hiring in this, you should come apply for the job. And that can really help you get a foot in the door as far as like applying, because that is the issue right now in academia as a whole, is that there are far more PhDs being produced than there are jobs being open, and in an era of increasing what we call it in the US adjunctification or multi-sessionalization here, something like that, where there's more of a move towards contingent labor versus tenure track labor. And in the academic job market, it becomes really important to kind of utilize and leverage any advantages that you might have and any relationships that you might have in your search. So that might be something too that like every week kind of think about, okay, what am I doing? Where am I in kind of this arc of trying to build up connections, trying to build up a profile nationally or internationally that will help me get through that. When there's a job open at, let's say, UBC, and there's 300 people applying, how do I make sure that my application gets through that first like cut of like 100 or 200 people, that I can actually maybe get closer to getting on the long short list or the short list and getting a campus interview and things like that. And I just did a workshop at Ohio State actually for students of color there about the job markets, and so this is something that I just about a week ago I did this, so this is like really fresh in my mind talking about this kind of stuff.
That's great. Yeah, so I highly recommend postdocs. They really give you a nice time to transition. So this is for PhD students who are then going to be dance, I'm sorry, to the MA students. But it is a really good opportunity. I recommend that you apply, start contacting people April. If you want them to take you on, and you need to get your applications in, I think October for sure.
Yeah. September. I was about to say, I think we were signing applications in September.
Yeah. And you want to send a prospective postdoc supervisor your CV, a short paragraph of what you're currently doing, and a short paragraph of what you would like to do during your postdoc. And I have to say, I totally agree with DeAndre around networking. So I met my first postdoc supervisor through an RA position, but my second postdoc during drinks at the CPSA. It's those in between, those social occasions, rather than formal conference panels, that you're actually gonna have opportunities that you begin to see are gonna open doors for you. So I think, as much as some people might hate it, I'm quite good at chit-chatting, but I used to be quite good, but now I hate it. But what I do is prepare a 1 minute for people that really aren't interested and want to talk to somebody else. They're always looking over your shoulder. A 1 minute description of your work, a 5 minute description for someone who has a few more minutes, and then a 10-15 minute one for someone you're sitting with at dinner, right? So have those rehearsed, those sort of talking points. That's really helpful. I do recommend a postdoc, as I say. And then I think the other part of the question was if you want to do non-academic jobs, maybe want to break into the academy when there are so few positions. So one strategy that I learned very successfully was by witnessing a friend of mine who couldn't get a job. And so she applied for a job at a university, this is at SFU, as a grants facilitator. She didn't know that much about grants, I should say. But it was her in, because then she got 50% in poli-sci and then 50% somewhere else. And that was her way of trying to secure a position. You have to, if there aren't tenure track positions, you have to be a bit creative. So I do recommend that as an option, or do some work with a think tank, or maintain your status, a relationship with a university, so that when you're applying for jobs, you can still kind of say, I'm at such and such university, I'm at UVic. And some people also suggested to me, which I thought was really helpful, instead of defending in March, when the job market is done, defending your PhD then, defend later, so that it doesn't look like there's a big gap on your resume. I know that's like it prolongs you, there's a financial cost potentially, but those are strategies of like surviving in the academy.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough too, right? Because right now, as people go on the job market, some places won't consider applicants that don't have PhD in hand.
Yeah, that's true.
But I do find that places will, if you have like the early fall defense days, right? But still, like if your supervisor can clearly say that their defense is set for this date, then they'll take that up a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would also say for some of the folks, I mean, the hard thing with the Indigenous positions is like so many students are taking them ABD.
Yeah, I know you have to.
I would say that with regard to postdocs, it might be really useful for those folks if you do end up taking a position ABD to like think about going after a postdoc once you're already in a position.
Yeah.
So there are some opportunities, like I don't remember when I was at the Jackman Humanities Institute, which actually comes with faculty buyouts. So I was on sabbatical, but you can like actually get bought out of your teaching to be a faculty fellow there. So that can, you know, there's like different opportunities that might be available, or you can possibly work with your university to build in a kind of postdoc opportunity. So something to keep in mind for those that end up taking a job early, like building in different moments to focus on your research becomes so key, right?
Yeah, and you might not have a choice. I mean, maybe financially you better get a job, or there's only so many jobs in the city you want to live in. And so you're going to apply whether you're ABD or not. And I think you should just plan to do that and then just kind of see how it goes. Because you can also, I mean, I don't like to say this, but you can also negotiate once you've been made an offer to extend your start date.
Okay.
So if you've been made a job offer and you're starting July 1st, but you will not actually going to get done until November, you can like go back to university. Once they've made you a job offer, they want you. So you have a bit of leeway to actually negotiate that. So, and I, recommend anyone that, who's in that situation, come and see any of us. We'll give you some tips on that. And if you're negotiating, women tend to under-negotiate their salary, their base salary. Don't negotiate on your own until you get some advice. I got amazing women helping me, and I really recommend making sure you seek advice around that.
I would almost say that if it's possible to do so, I don't think it would hurt if you are looking to go on the academic job market in year 3 or year 4 of the PhD and just applying to a few jobs. I mean, you don't obviously, you apply kind of thinking that you might not make it through like the first kind of round of cuts, but it kind of gives you an idea of some like how to build a cover letter, how to build a research statement, how to build an educational, like a teaching statement, a diversity statement for some universities. It helps you to kind of craft how you describe yourself in your work. My advisor made me do that. So I think my 3rd year, she made me apply for a job at Western, and I obviously didn't make it through, but it gave me a chance to kind of start building the job application portfolio, so that by the time in year 4 and then in the 1 year for postdoc where I was actually seriously going after jobs, it wasn't the learning curve wasn't steep, and I had worked out some of the bugs and some of the kind of edits that I needed to make to my portfolio, by the time it was actually time to apply for jobs. Actually, I started doing that with after that Western application, and I think I had an in-person interview the last year of my PhD actually, and that was one where it was kind of out of left field, but I kind of realized, oh hey, I probably did this because like my advisor and I actually worked on like improving all my statements and things of that nature.
And it does take 2-3 months of your life. Like assume that time is gone. When the year you're applying for jobs, you're not going to be working on your dissertation during that time, crafting your letter, your cover letter, your research program letter. You have to provide a teaching philosophy, as DeAndre said. Those things will take time. And so you really want to make sure you allow for that to develop as much as you can. The other tip is that some big conferences like the American Political Science Association will actually meet potential candidates for 10-minute meetings. So if a department is hiring at a major conference, they might want to meet with you at a conference, just to kind of get a sense of who you are. And that's another way to kind of, enter the job market.
It's also how a lot of us develop contracts with publishers.
Yeah.
Right. So conferences. I mean, I think this is like a lot of what you guys are talking about is also about like why it's so important to be an active citizen within your field, right? Like whether that's like attending events at your university where you get a chance to meet lots of other people who are being brought in, or going to national conferences. I mean, I was like meeting with numerous presses while I was still writing a dissertation and had multiple contract offers because like our faculty were just constantly putting graduate students in touch with presses and going through like the publishing process, right? So
and for MA students, as well as those that don't want to kind of stay with the academy, those speaker events or conferences also open up doors potentially for you. It's not just academic contacts that you'll make during that time. There might be public policy people there, or government types, or community people that are looking for somebody. So don't assume that that's your only route. Like it's good to kind of think about that as opening other kinds of opportunities for you as well. So that's really important. Often I find what people are looking for is like, do they have a connection with you? And so they're only going to kind of sense that by engaging. Let me see what else. Oh yeah, just on that point too, and Heidi's point around like, make yourself present to different events, conferences, workshops. And it might be that you just pop in and pop out. That's like, there are lots of reasons why it's not always possible to stay for the whole thing. I think it's really important to be visible. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to actively participate. You can be visible and be observing. You don't have to always show up with a brilliant question or, the most amazing insight. Most of us don't have those. Yeah, so be visible, but don't feel like you have to. You can observe, is what I'm trying to say as well. And there was a question by Vanessa, a question around relationship building and how to deal with conflict.
Ooh, that's tough.
DeAndre?
Yeah, so I guess this is where I continue to say that I don't mind saying these things out in the open because these things need to be talked about, right? I got actively bullied in my PhD program, so I dealt with conflict every. Some years it seemed like every single day I popped up into the geography building. It was just a microaggression waiting to happen, or departmental happy hours became something where I actively avoided them because I was like, okay, there's a 100% chance that somebody's going to get drunk and say an anti-Indigenous slurs. We have this happy hour. So one of the things that I learned to deal with is, and this can be counterintuitive, right? It might be counterintuitive to me because my immediate reaction when like somebody says something racist is nowadays like I'm not big on turning the other cheek. I'm like, no, I think I'm going to challenge you on this because if I let it go, you'll say it to somebody else. But it's picking and choosing when to extend your energy to do so. So there are conflicts that can be productive, right? And conflicts, it doesn't necessarily need to be you fighting with somebody. Sometimes there could be like a conflict between like, you know, where your advisor wants you to do and kind of where you want to go that can be resolved in a constructive way to help you. Or it could be, you know, conflicts between different theoretical styles or epistemological kind of viewpoints in seminars, right? I mean, I feel like that's half of the seminar sometimes. It's like, you know, it's trying to reconcile those things. Those are things that are worth your time, and those are things that, if done right, can be super productive. What is not productive are conflicts that demean you as a person or demean your identity, right? Those are the ones that you need to, need to steer clear of, and B, you need to be able to bring in higher ups if need be. So talk to your supervisor if you're dealing with somebody that's being aggressive towards you, and don't be afraid to elevate that. That was one of the things where my advisor was doing all she could, but you know, the department chair was pretty indulgent of those types of things. And so it became a point where I think I was almost like, okay, so do I need to go talk to the Title IX coordinator on our university campus for you to do something? I know sometimes there's kinds of fears around that, and that's a very worst case scenario, right? But understand that there are resources out there to help you with kind of conflict management. You know, and again, those are the worst case things. A lot of times, sometimes it might just be, you know, if you're not getting along with somebody, just saying, okay, I need to take some time. We need to take some time to just not be around each other and kind of go our separate ways, and then come back and see if we can resolve it without there being, you know, like a lot of like hot tempers or kind of like hot like emotions. Sometimes I talk about emotions, sometimes in temperatures, right? And that kind of conflict. Sometimes there's very, I think about it as like a hot cold kind of viewpoint. You know, sometimes that might help. But I think, yeah, you know, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, especially for the Indigenous students in here, where, you know, if you, and I think those of us here at this table, right, like Heidi and Rita can say, you know, if you don't stand up for yourself and you don't advocate for yourself, right? And this is not a victim blaming statement here, but it is saying, you know, if people in these colonial structures get the idea that they can mistreat you, their general move is that they're going to, okay, I can keep doing this, and like there won't be any repercussions. But the moment that you kind of put a hand up and say stop, like, you know, I'm not going to be treated like this, that's a moment where they kind of stop and think a little bit. And sometimes there's some folks that kind of code that as like aggression, right? I know as a Black Indigenous man, right? I think that's something, and especially with women of color, right? And Indigenous women, that's something that oftentimes gets ascribed to us, right? If we stand up and we enforce boundaries, and we're aggressive and we're being pushy. But as I said, your main goal is to get through your program, right? And to do what you need to do in order to get that degree. Trying to resolve conflicts with people that don't have any interest in resolving them, or don't have any respect for you as a human being, that is not part of your job description in that program. And so, you know, either try to do your best to avoid those situations, or, you know, don't be afraid to put up those boundaries when you need to do so to protect your own mental well-being.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm so sorry you had that experience. It's just way too familiar, right? Like, hear that shitty story again and again. So I totally agree with everything DeAndre said. A couple of sort of things to add to it, because I think there are at least 3 different kinds of conflicts that happen in the academy. One is potentially with your supervisor, which is your relationship with your supervisor is probably the biggest relationship you have as a graduate student, even more than your lover or your partner. I would say, at least that was my experience. So if it doesn't work out with your supervisor, think about it's okay to change supervisor, but do it in a way where you feel like you hold your integrity, you show respect to the person that was your supervisor. You know, I think that just know that that isn't, you don't have to be stuck in that kind of dynamic. The second is with other grad students. Some grad students have a lot of expectations that you're going to be like, I don't know, the Indigenous voice in the department or on the grad student committee, that you should show up to every damn protest that you organize, that there should be, you know, a particular kind of role that you take on because you're Indigenous or a person of color, or that you do Indigenous politics, and you don't. I think the labor of navigating the academy is pretty intense as it is. And I certainly don't know what it's like for an Indigenous female scholar in political science to navigate that space as much as I've had a shitty time in poli-sci too. So I think part of it, the conflict is the grad student expectations. I totally agree with Deonde that take some time out. Take some time out, bit of distance, bit of separation. And then one of the things that I've learned is you don't actually have to go back and talk to them about like resolving things. Sometimes you should just start acting the way you want to be, rather than trying to process everything. I think that can sometimes be much better. I think it's also good for grad students to connect with more senior grad students, because you're not in kind of competing for the same resources or the same kind of time with the supervisor. So I think connecting with other senior grad students is really important. If you choose to speak up, brace yourself. The backlash is going to come. You're going to have to pay the price at some point. Sometimes it isn't straight away. Sometimes it's later. But brace yourself, and then call one of your aunties. That's like my answer to everything. Call your aunties or your sisters or whoever your community is. Remember that who you are, that your authentic voice matters in the work that you're doing, whether or not you finish grad school. Document. That is huge. It's one of the mistakes that I made over the past few years. I was so overwhelmed with some of the racism I was experiencing that I didn't document everything, and then I wished I had. And so it doesn't have to be a long essay. It can just be, you know, the date, the brief event, who it involved, and the impact it had on you. So it can be very brief. I think that's really important, to document everything. Don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up if you didn't have the snappy response, if you didn't have the one-liner, or you felt embarrassed, or you cried, or your face went red, or you said something, you were angry. Don't beat yourself up about it. The Academy does plenty of that for us. Be kind to yourself, and maybe this is something, I don't know, I guess I would also say, and this I learned from a woman called Aisha Ahmed, who's written about this, but be forgiving of the Indigenous faculty, the scholars of color, when we fail you. You know, sometimes we're dealing with our own stuff in the academy and we can't always be present in the way that we would like. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't come back, you know, like try again. But, you know, she talks about it in terms of forgiveness and freedom. And sometimes, all the time, we're not as free as we would like to be in the university. And so we can be eroded by that, but it doesn't mean that you're alone. And that's a big message around conflict. You're not alone. You're going to get the languages that you young people use now, gaslighting institutions, I would say, institution gaslighting.
Sarah's right.
Yeah, so
That's what we say.
yeah, that's what you say. you know, and I think that you have to pick and choose, like DeAndre said, pick and choose your battles. And if you need to, take a leave of absence. Take a leave of absence, take a medical leave, figure out a way to take care of your health first. I know that sounds really kind of West Coast-ish, West Coast hippie or whatever, but unless you're well, you can't actually do the political work you wanted to do. And I learned that the hard way. I kept pushing and pushing, and I shouldn't have. And so what I've learned to do now is I begin my day with my health. If I don't organize my day around my health, I have a bad day. And so I think that the academy can be really wearing. And so it's really, this is not like, you know, just do yoga or meditation, go to the spa. I mean, like actually, like think about what it means to be well. And make that a routine. Like your 15 to 30 minutes of writing is non-negotiable. It's also non-negotiable for you to think about your well-being. That's part of the work that grad students have to do as well. That's part of your schedule. It has to be part of our schedule, part of our every day. So we're going to get, you know, especially Indigenous faculty and students and staff get treated pretty symbolically or pretty shitty, even that you pick. Or anyone that stands with them does. So, you know, you really have to think about your well-being. And sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say, and like figure out what brings you joy in the academy.
I was
You
like,
know,
or outside of it.
or outside.
Like, don't you think like the academy encourages people not to have any kind of like life outside of it? Like, it's like, if you enjoy painting or boxing or cooking or
Like,
theater or what, like, you know, don't give up those other things outside of the academy either, right? That keep you.
Or if you're gonna, like, if you feel like, oh, I can't, I have to teach, I have to research, you know, Morgan, I'm thinking, you know, folks like you who are raising a family, or you have elderly family members you're taking care of. Think about ways of introducing that into your classroom. You know, you know, like I very deliberately have set an assignment where the students have to present on some joyful or example of being in good relation. And so there's different ways of thinking about how not to let the university completely overshadow your beautiful being.
And like, I would think I would just add to that, like, for folks who are struggling in particular moments, because everyone will have them, right? You should reach out to your supervisors, like, and the other faculty that you have relationships with and trust in. Because one, many of us have also been there. And two, like, we often have a bunch of solutions that can help with that. So, you know, I find often that like students wait a really long time before they'll come to me with some things, and then we'll be like, here's 6 things we can do to change that. And they're like, what? I had no idea, you know. So there's also a bunch of like other ways through lots of university expectations or different things, and we can help you navigate that. So, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to others for help through those things, right?
One other thing, what I remember for those of you trying to like transition from comps to thesis writing, or if you just stalled on your thesis writing, is break down just one section. So like your lit review section or your method section, and just focus on that until you kind of do one little tiny piece of it. Not that a lit review is just really a tiny piece of it, but you know, like pick a piece that feels manageable. And set a timetable. What's your schedule? Like I know some universities some departments will have like a schedule that we recommend, and the handout that we'll send will have that. So for MA students, you should be thinking about thesis statement, like what your overall project is going to be, whether it's a research paper, a community project, or a thesis by December. You should have like 3 or 4 pages figured out around that, is what I would say to you. But figure out what your timetable is and work backwards. Like if you know I'm going to be out of money by July 1st, work backwards. How much time am I going to have to build in? So I've got 1 month to do 1 chapter, 1 month to do another chapter, but only 2 weeks to do the third. Like it helps you figure that out, right? You work backwards. That's really important.
I was going to say a couple of things. One of the biggest things that popped up to me when we're talking about conflict and talking about how to do things is something that I don't have a good term for it yet, but something that I know that we as Indigenous faculty face definitely, and I think students face as well. I know I did as a student is you know, the pressure that we need to be the ones that decolonize our departments or our programs, right? Like we are going to be the ones to completely decolonize it. I think that can be a cause of a lot of conflict too, is that when we don't live up to those expectations, right? You know, when we're not out there protesting or, you know, living up to what people's kind of ideals of what, you know, the mythical Indigenous academic or academic of color might look like, that people kind of get disappointed and they start getting angry, right? Because it becomes a transactional kind of thing where it's like they expect something out of us. I will say this again, your job is not to decolonize your program, right? Your job is to get your degree and get out of there. It's a process at best, at worst, you know, it's a question of, well, can you ever really truly decolonize like structures that are colonial to their core, right? So just bear that in mind, that is not your job, that you don't that you are not I apologize as somebody who's very chronically online, right? You're not their token Indian to, like, you know, that's going to magically, you know, transform the department. That is not your job, and that's a service burden that on faculty is like corrosive. You know, just at that level, like we get paid relatively well to do our jobs, right? So as a graduate student, like that's not your job.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The second thing I was going to say is that definitely do not to kind of echo what you said, Rita, reach out to your supervisor. I think the kind of one of the big turning points in my graduate degree, in my PhD program, was when I realized that the relationship between me and my advisor didn't need to be this very business, very kind of like standoffish relationship where I kind of needed to ask her permission for things, but I think it was the first time where I was like, I'm feeling homesick. Can I go home? May I like take leave from my TA position and go home for like a couple of weeks to visit my girlfriend and to like just be at home. And I went in there and I kind of did it really tentatively because I thought, oh, she's gonna say no, right? She's gonna no, we need you here. I kind of was asking in this very kind of sidestepping manner. She's like, hold on, no, just go ahead and ask me. You want to go home? And I was like, yes. And she said, yes. Because like that's deeply important to me to make sure that you are doing what you need to do to replenish yourself so that you can do what you need to do here in the program. So don't be afraid to have those kinds of conversations, right? And if your advisor isn't willing to have those kinds of conversations, and sometimes that might be a sign that another advisor might be kind of the next kind of step, right? So that's something that was, as I'm recruiting graduate students, I want my graduate students to feel comfortable, come to me with those kinds of things, because they're, you know, you as graduate students, you're not cogs in a machine, right? The institution will make you feel like you're a cog in a machine, and that your only things that you need to be doing is, you know, going to seminars or you know, teaching, aka providing cheap labor for the department, right? No, you're a human being with your own unique needs, and I think that quality mentorship means attending to both the academic but and the human side of the students as well. So don't be afraid to ask for those kinds of things if you need it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And if it's not your supervisor, maybe you don't want to change your supervisor, but maybe it's someone else in your committee or someone else that you've met, you know, that you can ask those questions of in terms of mentorship. Keep in mind that your supervisor can be really friendly, but it's not necessarily your friend. environment. And that can be a real something tricky for grad students, right? Where you want to kind of like hang out with your supervisor. And that might not happen. It doesn't mean that they don't care about you and want you to do well. So we've talked quite a bit. We only have 5 minutes left. Do you have any other questions or follow-up questions? And for anyone that is applying for jobs, you know, be in touch with us. I'm sure we all have different advice that we can offer. Happy to do that. Or postdocs. Any questions? We hope you found that useful. Is there anything that you feel like we didn't cover that would be helpful to come back to at some point? One other tip, what I remember is I encourage my grad students to meet with me at the beginning of the term, and we set 2 or 3 meetings for the term. And I find that helpful to do, just to kind of always have someone that I have to connect.
I think too, it's like everyone's super busy. So it's really important as a grad student to take control of your own stuff, right? Like, you know, you have to be on top of your own things. And it's important if you know, have chapters that need comments, whatever, that you're doing the follow-up, that you're, you know, connecting, because like things that might feel like they're all consuming and all you think about in your life are like one of 10,000 things that your committee members and supervisors are dealing with, right? So, and it's good to like chat with your supervisor and your committee members about how they want to move through like comments. And I also always think like students feel a lot of pressure in their first semester to identify committee members. And I really think it's like so much better to wait and like get a sense of what your project's really going to be and the people you have relationships with. So you can like explore like different kinds of mentorship and relationships with faculty without having to like formalize those right away in a kind of committee structure. But also when you find that you're like constantly going to the same people all the time, you might want to like recognize the work they're doing in your own work by bringing them onto your committee, which is not something I ever really thought about till a different faculty member pointed it out, that they were like talking to students about, you know, if you're gonna like have this person comment on your work all the time, then you should like recognize the influence and the labor that they're doing by like formalizing that relationship in a committee like position. So, you know, those are good things to think about. You know, and I think like one of the things you both have spoken about so much today has been about like seeking the advice of multiple people, you know, so it's good to just recognize that you are going to get lots of different feedback from different folks, and there'll be lots of great tips that come with that. And so, you know, it's important to nurture like multiple relationships. Like I remember when I was applying to grad school, the tips everyone kept giving was like, you never choose a university based on just your supervisor, because your supervisor could leave at any moment. And my supervisor literally had 6 job offers at least 6 job offers that he seriously considered while I was a grad student. So at every moment I was like, my supervisor's gonna leave me. So, you know, it was important that I like had a whole bunch of faculty I could work with and that I had cultivated relationships with. And so, you know, it's important to do that, because we all bring different insights and different like sets of experiences and skills to that. So don't be shy to like make lots of relationships with other grad students, with faculty. Like that is really how you can like get through. Yeah.
And thrive.
Yeah. and take all of Rita's note-taking tips. Literally, I ask Rita all the time for her notes. I'm like, did you read this book? Did you write 20 pages of notes? I would like to see them. So, I mean, it's really like the notes you take, you can draw on for the rest of your career.
Yeah.
So like taking that extra time at the end of reading things and like just drafting up some good notes will save you so much time in the future. I think some of the things that Rita had on here that she didn't get to was about like a good filing system for your email, for your reading, for your research interests, like figuring out how to organize your stuff early on will like save you years down the road. Like you will thank your past self for having been so organized. So.
And you can do that via email, like automatically set up like boxes, like certain email addresses go to certain files. Yeah, and just like on things like that, when things come in, that's when I file them, rather than opening like all my emails and then file them, which I've also done in the past. Yeah, I think that is really important. And just remember that you're here and you're amazing, and we want you to do well, like academically succeed, but also in your own sense of self. Your authentic voices, they matter.
Well, any last minute questions? Anyone else? Can leave it on that happy note. Again, I know it's difficult in these like hybrid contexts, but I just want to, you know, express my gratitude and appreciation to DeAndre and Rita for bringing all your useful tips and insights. We have both honorariums for you and these fancy blankets, so we'll hand those over to you each. But again, just want to thank you so much for your time and for sharing with all of us here today. So thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. It's so great to be able to be in community with all of you. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.